To Montreal now, where the Liberal Party held the first of two leadership debates. Last night, the contest was in French, which proved challenging at times for the perceived frontrunner.
Nous sommes d'accord avec Hamas, nous sommes d'accord avec une two-state...
Nous ne sommes pas d'accord avec Hamas, mais concernant Hamas.
Contre Hamas. Et pour une solution à deux États.
Well, joining us now are Susan Smith, former Liberal strategist, now principal and co-founder of Blue Sky Strategy Group. Jordan Paquet is a former Conservative strategist, now vice president with the same company. And George Soule is a former director of communications for the NDP, currently managing a local campaign in the Ontario election. You're almost there, George. Hello to the three of you.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
So listen, when we look at last night's debate, really the first chance for Liberal members to see all four candidates up there debating, the first chance for Francophone members to see the candidates speak in French. You know, I'll begin with Mark Carney because he is the perceived front runner, and it seemed that he was struggling with his French up there on the stage. I'm wondering if he has hurt his bid to become leader of the party, Susan.
First of all, it was a chance for the four candidates to introduce themselves broadly to everybody. They each got to introduce themselves in their own words. You know, Mark did struggle with his French, but in my view, French is a muscle, and some of the people on the stage have been at the gym more frequently than Mark has. But when you go to the gym, your muscles build up, your strength builds up, and if you look at Stephen Harper when he started out, his French wasn't super great. Pierre Poilievre, when he came to Ottawa, his French wasn't super great. And I think the important thing with Mark is he understands the concepts of what he's trying to explain. He maybe doesn't have all the vocabulary, but he's got the comprehension, he's got the vision, and he's got the plan. I think Quebecers are very forgiving. Francophones are very forgiving. They appreciate effort. They recognize commitment. And in terms of the message he was conveying to Francophones across the country, and Quebecers in particular, he talked about Maître chez nous, and he talked about defense of the Francophone language. I think he left the right taste in people's mouths, if a recognition that he's got to spend some more time practicing, there's no question. But he focused on Trump, he focused on Poilievre, and he generally got the message across. I think to people in the English language debate tonight, it'll be a stronger performance, I'm sure.
Yeah, which is the expectation. But again, last night was the French debate. Jordan, when you look at how Liberals have been building their brand under Mark Carney when it comes to recent polling, what did you think of last night's performance?
So, I mean, I'll let some Francophone speakers judge how it was. And, I mean, if you're looking at some of the reviews, it wasn't great. He did struggle in some issues. I mean, when he came out and said, we all agree with Hamas, Chrystia Freeland had to then correct him. And that kind of happened a lot on the stage last night. You didn't really see a lot of cut and thrust back and forth as you'd normally see in a debate. I think that means that this race is all but over. The other candidates are kind of looking at Mark Carney. They don't want to do anything to annoy him, knock him off message at all, and give Conservative attack heads to play, because they're probably auditioning for some senior jobs in a future government. So we'll see what happens tonight in the English debate, and if they get a little bit sharper in some of their own language. But it's very clear that that heading into it, Mark Carney presumably is going to be Prime Minister in the next few weeks.
I like that.
Not in the terms of the general election. We'll wait for the general election, then we'll get to that. But he will. He'll be walking into it, and we still don't know in both official languages a lot of ideas what he stands for, because he can't clearly communicate them in both official languages. He says one thing in English and then a different thing in French, two different audiences. So we'll see what happens in the English.
In the general election?
I absolutely think so. Yeah.
Okay, George, what do you make of it? Again, Mark Carney is the perceived front runner, and so there was a lot of attention paid to him. He's been doing well in terms of polling numbers in Quebec. He struggles last night with his French. What do you think the impact of that will be?
Well, I mean, I take Susan's point that French is a muscle that you have to exercise, but if you're going to the Olympics, then you should work out. And I think that was one of the issues. He knew this was coming. He knows he's running to be the Prime Minister of Canada, and more than that, I think there's a bar that's set higher, and that the Liberals have forever set higher for themselves to be, or at least to be perceived as the unifying party of the country. And if if they can't have a front runner or a serious leadership candidate who has a really good understanding and management of the French language. I think that's a problem for them. On the flip side, I also want to say that I think, going after him on the slip up and agreeing with Hamas when what he meant to say was we all agree on our position on Hamas, I think was a bit of a cheap shot. Like Jordan just misspoke briefly. I do it all the time on this show. I think you have to give people a little bit of leeway, but overall, it was also just the accents. It was how much slower they all were. I think that goes for all of them, with the exception of Mr. Bayless. You could tell that they were struggling, and it was more prepared remarks rather than kind of an actual cut and thrust of the debate, even though the moderator kind of kept trying to encourage people to debate more and more. I didn't listen to the interpretation, so I do wonder how each of the interpreters were. I know that sometimes the French language debates, people can get an advantage if they get a really good interpreter and sound stronger in English. But I do think it's something Mark Carney is going to have to really work on, because I think to be perceived even across English Canada to be strong, he has to convince Canadians that he can win in Quebec. And to do that, I think his French needs to be much, much better than it was last night.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that if he wins the leadership, he's going to have to debate Pierre Poilievre as well as Yves-François Blanchet on that stage, as well as Jagmeet Singh, whose French is not that bad either.
And all of their French, for the moment, is better than Mark Carney's. Yves-François Blanchet he's a francophone. Poilievre has been in the French gym for a while on the taxpayer's dime, learning French. His wife's a francophone. Jagmeet Singh's French is excellent. Mark's will come up. I believe it'll come up. What's different about Carney than everybody else, though, is his capacity on the economy, understanding the really complex issues, the network, and the ability to put forward the path that we need to deal with Trump. And that is what people are going to measure him on. I think they will give him some leeway on his French. They will say, yes, you have to work on that. And I think he'd be the first person to say, yes, I have to work on that. But what we need, Donald Trump doesn't speak French. And if Mr. Carney can, drive the economy in a way that we need as a country to deal with Trump, to deal with the trade deals that we have to put together to keep the economy going, and at the same time demonstrate to Francophones that he's going to put the time and the effort in to be able to communicate all of those great things to them as best he can, I think Canadians are reasonable.
Okay, listen, very quickly, I got to do a round. We're running out of time. Tonight is the English debate. What are you watching out for, Jordan? I'll get you to start.
Well, we'll see if Mark Carney says the same things in English as he does in French. I mean, we already saw before he had said in English out west he was going to put pipelines across the country, whether the province like it or not. He goes to Quebec and says something totally different when he talks in French. So we'll see what happens there. And also on some of his economic messages, talking about he's going to balance the budget. I mean, that's a complete trick when he's talking about that on the capital budget side. Then he's just going to completely continue to run deficits on that. So I think Canadians will see through that as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether Chrystia Freeland actually does step up tonight and try and challenge him as the former finance minister and really put it to him on some of these key policy issues and actually have him tested. Because one thing that will be bad for the Liberals is if Mark Carney walks into the general election campaign, which looks like it's coming into March. He'll be Prime Minister for a few weeks. That's what I meant to say before. And he'll walk onto the debate stage with Pierre Poilievre and he'll be completely lost. He'll be untested, unchallenged, and he won't be ready for prime time.
Well, we'll see. George, what are you watching out for tonight?
Well, I think just quickly, I think it'll be interesting to see now that the contestants or the contestants for the Liberal leadership aren't held back by their second language. It'll be interesting for me to see if they still have the kid gloves on Mark Carney. So to Jordan's point earlier, was the lack of pushing his buttons last night a result of the inability to really debate, or was it because they've all given up and they just want to help the coronation of Mark Carney? And if that's the case, I understand the strategy, but I do think, again, agreeing with Jordan, that I think that will mean that Mark Carney won't have been tested in the way that most Liberals will want their leader to have been tested, and I think that'll be a challenge for them in the federal election.
Yeah, when the general election happens, Susan, what are you watching out for tonight?
I think all of the candidates to put out their positions. I don't think it will be a gloves-off, knockdown brawl. That wouldn't be in the best interest of the party. We're too close to a general election. I don't think the Liberals want to give any fodder to the Conservatives and the opposition machines for commercials during campaigns. I think you'll see each of the candidates showcasing who they are, and Carney in particular introducing himself to Canadians and trying to build the confidence and support of Canadians to show that he's the guy that's ready to lead the country, and he can take on Poilievre. Carney is not a pugilist. He never will be a pugilist. Pierre Poilievre is. That's his mark, his mantra, his captain slogan. That is not Carney. It's never going to be Carney. So he'll do the debate tonight with the Libs. It'll test him. It'll start him on the road. It won't be the kind of debate he'll have with Poilievre. But, you know, the man's been the governor of the Bank of Canada. He's been the governor of the Bank of England. He stood in front of difficult conversations before. I think he'd be able to handle himself.
Okay, well, we're watching, and happily I'll have the three of you back tomorrow. But until then, we'll watch the debate and we'll chat later. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Wow.